My name's Mooney. My hobby, my passion in the evening is to analyse football and create insight from football data. In terms of eureka moments, let's have a think. I thought it was really interesting to look at the composition of teams that win and how they deploy their resources. If your club is of a certain size, how much of that size is chopped up on the field and where does it put its money? What horses does it back, if you like? This visualisation was my attempt to try and overlay a study of how winning teams balance their resources. So if a team's going to put X million pounds on the field, how do they slice that up by playing position? This here is based on Liverpool turnover from, I think, 2011-2012, so it's a little bit old. £188 million. Split that based on playing positions, on-field playing positions, for the first 11 and the reserves, and also from a wage and transfer fee perspective. All I've done here is show basically how much the club should be looking to spend from a budget point of view. So if, for example, they wanted to act prudently and to give themselves the chance to sort of live to fight another day, Liverpool should look to spend around, at this turnover level, around £9 million for a striker, with a maximum of 18 million. Because if you overpay, you're committing to quite a long relationship, an expensive relationship. So making sure the wages are balanced is very important. I can now look at any club and say, this is how much they should be looking to invest in this particular area of the field if they play this way or if they play that way. And that's great to have those universal things. I really like that. When I create something that effectively can be applied anywhere, that's when I'm really excited, I guess. This is a sample from the recruitment model that I've been working on, and what it allows you to do very simply is look at the talent pool from the perspective of their players' market value or estimated market value, and their score using an index that I've used to essentially assess their career. And this is again based on Liverpool, based on the turnover level of £188 million. So if you think about the y-axis as being the sort of the rating scale, so the higher the better on that, and obviously the cheaper the better as well. So what you want really are players that score highly on this and are low down the financial scale. That would be an area of interest. What we've identified as players that are probably beyond Liverpool's budget based on the budgeting model that I've also built. So Mesut Ozil might be the top candidate in this particular age range and position, but he's probably too much for Liverpool to buy. Similarly, Toni Kroos at Bayern Munich is another player who would probably fill the role very well, and he's a very capable player, but we couldn't afford to buy him basically. And then a player here from Denmark called Christian Eriksen. Christian Eriksen's actually a player we've been very strongly linked with. And the fun thing about this viz, I guess, is that this is a year old, this data is a year old. So 1 year later, the club is trying to buy this player for around this kind of money. And I was there a year ago, I had that predicted. It was predicted, but I'd identified him as a real candidate. So there is some resonance, I think, between this data and what we're actually seeing now play out in the transfer market, which is great fun for me because it validates the work. I put this together to try and dispel a few myths. So people were contacting me on Twitter asking about different managers and how they performed. And I thought, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go back and look, from 1950, which is the sort of start of Bill Shankly's era, which is the sort of the dawning of modern Liverpool, effectively, and look back over that entire time and look at managerial performance. When people say how it's bad, I could give them an accurate assessment of how bad things are, or how bad things weren't. So this basically looks at a 6-game moving average of the cumulative points return, and what you can see is that the modern era, the last 2-3 seasons, have been some of the worst consecutively in the club's history, and it becomes really clear just how bad those have been. So the green one at the end is Brendan Rodgers, and that's he's the latest manager that we've had. I put this together to perhaps tell a story about how irrational the modern game can be. What you get is, again, myths start to form around managers. Nostalgically, you look back and say, Bob Paisley's first season, it would have been fantastic because he was fantastic. But actually, when you look at the data, the story's entirely different. And what you see here, this is Bob Paisley. Bob Paisley was on a consecutive downward decline, effectively. Over the course of his first season, the team's performance was actually declining as he bedded into his new role. Now, in the modern game, he'd have probably been fired. But this is the guy that went on to be the most successful manager in British football history. On the reverse of that, Brendan Rodgers, what's beautiful about this one actually is that the latest manager's first season is almost a symmetrical mirror of the great man's first season. And what you see with Brendan Rodgers is this gradual, iterative climb towards a sustainable average level of performance as far as Liverpool managers go. And his performance is on par with all managers' first seasons, despite the club having a very tough season last year. The rationale, the logic is very human. It's just the numbers leave a vapour trail, and I use those to tell my story.